these animals from becoming extinct.
Past the hour, time now for our tropical update and how quiet it can be in the Gulf of Mexico. But we have areas of interest out there that the National Hurricane Center actually has percentages of probability on. I'll talk about those in just a moment. Let's take a look at the Gulf of Mexico here. Top side of the ridge, bottom side of the ridge. Everybody in the middle is nice and happy. And through a wave that moved through Puerto Rico today with showers and thunderstorms. They have quickly diminished tonight, just a little leftover high cloud debris. But what is this? South of the Cape Verde Islands, little area of disturbed weather here, actually several hundred miles to the southeast of the Cape Verde Islands. A lot of times we talk about areas that are off toward the west. So here it is. It's an invest now. So that means the Hurricane Center says, hey, I need some models on this. Where do you think it's going? Right now, winds are about 30. The pressure's estimated at 1,010, moving west-northwest at 15 miles per hour. We'll see how fast this gets in time, and that is one of the key things to having this develop or not, as we saw with Chantal. So let's take a look at the model suite, and I'm going to tell you this right now. I have never seen this kind of consistency out 5 days. I mean, look at that. These are lines on top of lines. Now, I don't know if those models are all run with the same data. That's a good possibility. But either way, that's pretty consistent there. And again, they have not run a full suite yet. What could inhibit this development? Well, you can see the huge pockets of dry air off to the northwest. So here's our circulation here. And as this moves to the west, we'll see if some of this gets entrained into the circulation. There is always the possibility of that. But right now, it's kind of protected. It's got a nice little cone of protection, if you will, in terms of the moisture around it, so it's not being hindered by that. There's also a pretty strong low-level easterlies here, so at 35 miles per hour, I probably would have drawn them more like this, given the fact that, you know, we're seeing this kind of westerly movement, and that's the way the steering is going to take it over the next several days. So this high winds may limit development here over the past over the next several days, I should say. Also, you know, if you remember Chantal, it had a hard time developing because of the very fast movement, and this is probably a similar consequence. I mean, unless you've got gangbuster tropical bubbling going on out and through here, it's going to be pretty hard to do so. So here's the American model, taking it almost like we saw with the track. All of these models keeping it north of the U.S., Puerto Rico, and Virgin Islands, and, well, it doesn't look like they develop it all that much. So now that we've seen a couple of these things work their way across the Atlantic, some have developed, some haven't. We've had Chantal. What does that mean for the rest of the tropical season? Well, senior hurricane forecaster Michael Lowry has some interesting insight into that.
Some new numbers just in from the Weather Channel updating its hurricane season forecast. Take a look at our latest outlook, now calling for 16 named storms, 8 of those to become hurricanes and 3 of those intensifying into Category 3 or higher storms on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Now, this is down just a tick from our previous forecast that called for 9 hurricanes and 4 of those becoming Category 3 or higher. But take a look here, still well above the 30-year average of 12 named storms. Now, the reason for the decrease in these numbers is because of the ocean temperatures. Back in May, we were looking at some very warm ocean waters, warmer than average across most of the Atlantic, especially off the coast of Africa out here. But as we moved into June, take a look at the ocean temperatures cooling off, especially down here in our formation zone. But make no mistake about it, still very warm ocean temperatures, about what we expect this time of year. And the reason for the cooling is because of this very strong Bermuda high, and the clockwise flow around this high pressure system has increased the easterly trade winds. And what happens when you have this increase in winds, it mixes the surface of the ocean, and that in turn cools the ocean waters. But the takeaways here are that we're still predicting an above normal and a very busy hurricane season still ahead because of these warm ocean waters. And the bottom line, guys, the most active period beginning in earnest here as we move into August and September. Keep in mind, it only takes one storm, regardless of the numbers, to cause a disaster. Back to you.
All right, good stuff, Michael Lowry. Let's talk about the Pacific here now. That Atlantic wave, the Invest 98L there, was at 30% from NHC. Also at 30% is Invest 98E. All right, this is the Eastern Pacific, and you can see this thing sitting right down and through here. Pressure estimated at 1,000 or 1,007, winds at 30 miles per hour. Here's what the forecast model suite thus far does with this Invest. A little more dispersion in the models as we get up toward 20 degrees north, and that could be because we're starting to get toward that cooler water. All right, I'll show you that in just a second. Here are the ocean temperatures in relation to Invest 9080. This is pretty low, so if it travels far to the south, it stays over warmer waters. If it goes farther northwest, it starts to hit those cooler waters and weaken. So the models, of course, start to differ in what they do with it from that point on. Once it weakens, it's just a low-level cloud swirl, and it's not really subject to the steering winds at that point anymore. So right now, again, moving right along, guys, at about 10 degrees north, a wave that could make its way all the way across the Pacific. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Jim, and thank you for staying with us on Weather Center Live.
We're back with you in 2 hours. Until then, we'll have live weather updates throughout the night.